All right, this is the seventh episode of BBall Pro Insider, and you're watching the Candice Wiggins YouTube channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching. So today's episode is, will the top seeds be challenged? That's the question. Last night were a lot of games. It was very interesting last night to see. And, I had predicted that there'd be some playoff matchups in the Eastern Conference, and it turned out that while it was competitive, the top seeds held rank and they're standing strong. So I think that today a good question is, will the top seeds really be challenged moving forward? And there's starting to be a lot of separation now. And there's a point right now in the season where teams are starting to drift and conferences are starting to open up, but yet there's this closing that's happening too. So it's still the great wide open, but every game counts. So we're going to look at the games last night that were relevant, and then we're going to talk about the games tonight because always, 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 you're only as great as your next game. And we're a predictions program, meaning we're looking ahead, foreshadowing. The way that we make our predictions is we use the past, in this case yesterday, along with the present today, in order to get a clear scope for the future. So with that being said, let's get right to it. Starting with the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs had a huge win last night against the Timberwolves. They won 111 to 108. Just like we predicted, it was a wild, wild West game, meaning it was all over the place. The Timberwolves were leading by so much for most of the game, and then the Spurs ended up coming back fourth quarter and winning that game, and it was a really amazing effort, team effort, coaching effort, all of those things. But the biggest thing is the Spurs did their homework and they moved up to number 8 in the West. They have really set a good baseline for themselves moving forward in this fight for the playoffs. Okay, next game, huge game, was the Knicks. The Knicks won big against the Bulls, and they won 107 to 103 on the road against the Bulls. And this was a really important game because the Knicks in particular looked really good in the last 6 minutes. And during their last game that they lost the Clippers, it was a really good game until the last 6 minutes. But this game they finished strong. And if the Knicks can start to adapt and learn how to control the end of game situations that they're right in, they could really stack up some wins and do some damage. They have moved up now to number 9. So those were huge jumps for the Spurs and for the Knicks. Okay, a couple of other big wins last night were the Thunder. The Thunder, they beat the Rockets, and it was they returned the favor to the Rockets, and they won 104 to 87. And the Thunder definitely did their homework, so that was really important, and they actually stayed the same at 12. The Thunder is a team that you can tell are they play very well at home. There's some teams where home court is they're must-win games, and the Thunder definitely delivered on that front. They're continuing in the fight, and it's the wild, wild west, so they just got to keep on stacking wins. And then finally, big, big, big winner last night on the Western Conference was the Kings. The Kings played the Celtics last night, and they won 116 to 111 to a very good Celtics team. I mean, this Celtics team is incredible, better than the 4th seed that they are currently at right now. And the Kings did their homework, won at home, and I did classify this game yesterday as a do or die directional game, and it was, and they delivered. And I think that the Kings are in a really good direction. They have a lot of momentum carrying them forward, and I think they have the confidence to know that they can beat a quality team. Even though I called it a do or die directional game, they were having so much fun out there. And it was really good to see that because, you want to work and it's very serious and intense, but you got to have fun while you're doing it as well. So the moral of the story from last night is great things happen when you do your homework. So now let's move on to today's games. There are 4 games tonight that are relevant to our program, starting with the Trailblazers versus the Sixers. The Sixers are on a back-to-back after having an amazing game, amazing win against the Hornets. The Sixers were pretty much in control the whole game. They have so much talent. The Sixers look like the top team in the East for sure. The Portland Trailblazers currently stand at number 7 in the West. So they have a really tough challenge tonight in beating the Sixers on the road. This will definitely be the biggest test for Portland this season. And I predict a good matchup, but I also saw how great the Sixers are performing. And when the Sixers are at full strength, they are probably the most dangerous team in this league. So Portland's got a challenge tonight, but we'll be watching that game. Number one, and then another number one is playing the Jazz, who are number one in the West, will be playing the Hawks, who are currently at number 6. Now, the Hawks had a disappointing loss last night against the Mavericks, but they're still in the 6th position on the East. So, again, this is another test for them, another West Coast team that can challenge them and just see how much they've grown from even last night. And I predict that the Hawks will definitely be ready, but the Jazz and the Sixers are number one on the East and West for a reason. And tonight we will see that. Next game we have the Warriors versus the Mavericks, and the Warriors are currently at 9 and Dallas is at 13. This Dallas team, I know they're determined to get a victory, but Golden State obviously, they're still fighting for playoff position. They're in a good place right now, so this is a wild, wild West game, classic, and it's at Dallas, so Dallas has got to take care of some things. Maybe being at home will help them start to get some momentum so that they can get back into the mix. But this Warriors team looks really solid, so we'll see how they do. But Wild Wild West, anything can happen. And then finally, another Wild Wild West game will be the Rockets versus the Grizzlies. And then Houston is at 10th place after their loss against OKC last night. And the Grizzlies are currently in 5th place. After their loss to the Pacers, they went down to 5th in the West. So both teams are really looking to bounce back. Both teams are looking for redemption to get their seasons back going again, getting some momentum. You're going to see a huge clash. You're going to see a battle, which is what the West is. So it's going to be a very physical game. It's going to be just a game of wills because both these teams have a lot to lose. Memphis wants to keep their standing really high in the West, and Houston wants to get in that playoff race. So this game is going to be a powerhouse game, and as always, a wild, wild West game, always entertaining. All right, so a lot of games, a lot of action happening tonight. Make sure you check back tomorrow.